All righty, everyone. So welcome to tonight's session on igniting critical thinking and collaboration with Lumio. I did drop in the chat today's agenda, so this is where all your resources can be found, but I will refer to this at the very end. So as I mentioned before, welcome to Igniting Learning with Critical Thinking and Collaboration in Lumio. This is a really great tool for both those things. So tonight I'm going to highlight some skills and some resources within Lumio that helps with critical thinking and collaboration. Before we get going, I do want you to join my class as a student. So I'm going to go to the classroom management tab and I'm going to grab this join link and I'm going to put it in the chat for everyone. This is a little bit easier than going to hellosmart.com, but you still want to join as a guest from that link. First things first is we're going to learn how to utilize Lumio to create and share interactive learning that ignites critical thinking and collaboration. So the key here is how we can use Lumio with critical thinking and also with collaboration. All right. And first things first is you're going to see different perspectives tonight. So the first one is that student perspective, and then we're going to build some activities from that teacher perspective. So it looks like I have a lot of middle school, which I'm at home with. Yep. And then some elementary, beautiful, some high school. So we have like a wide variety of different folks here tonight. And throughout, because you guys are all different grade bands, the way that you teach is totally different. I want you to think and reflect throughout how can you use Lumio to engage your students in not only learning, but also critical thinking opportunities as well as collaborative opportunities. All right, so this is just an icebreaker, but we're going to be looking at different tools through this icebreaker. So this is an activity about Survivor. Huge Survivor fan. I've watched a lot of the seasons, especially when the pandemic happened. My husband and I watched like 20 something seasons. I just want you to look at this activity. So this is called a flip out activity. It's a game that you can find in our game-based activities. I just want you to flip through each one of these cards and I want you to choose three that you would keep with you on a stranded island. Okay. Just in your brain, I want you to think through what three you would choose. If you need to, write them down. I just need you to flip out and look at each one of these. You can honestly flip them and keep them flipped open, to be honest. And which three you would keep. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to think about that. Two of these are very similar to each other. Not sure which one would be more useful. Not sure how many things I would be like screwing in here or needing a wrench for, but um, could be useful. I think I saw there was an engineering teacher in here. They would probably know how to engineer something very, very cool on a stranded island. Okay, so hopefully you've chosen your three items. You have it in your head. So I would have my kids thinking, okay, which ones would you choose? I'm going to switch it now to a shout it out. Shout it out are very similar to like a parking lot activity. These are really cool for student voice, student discourse, student feedback, things like that. So before you go and respond, before you respond, I want you to in the text box, I want you to tell me all three of the items you kept and why. All right. You don't have to write in full sentences, just like I chose mirror because I chose this, because I chose this. All right. So on the shout it out. Perfect. We got our first response. So I can see all the responses populating. I know we have a bigger crew than we did the previous session, so I'm going to wait a little longer. All right, so if you take a look at my screen. So conceptually, I just want us to think like this screen wouldn't necessarily be my second monitor because we are not really in a Zoom session, virtual session, during the school day. So this would actually be up on my board in the front of my classroom. So my kids are seeing the responses from their peers. Okay, so you can see that it's a parking lot. It looks like post-it note, that type of activity that we've done in the past. So the students actually can come up to the board and they can sort the responses. So you can move the responses around. Also, this could be really small for the students, maybe sitting a little bit further away from the board in the front of the classroom. So you can click on each response and go through each one of them. So here we have first aid kit because I expect to get hurt. Yep. Swiss Army knife because it has a lot of uses. And then finally the water filtration because clean water is very important. Beautiful. So I can go through all of these responses. I also could, I showed the previous session this. On the left-hand side as the teacher, I do have settings. So this gear typically means settings, more settings. I can go to that gear and I have some options. So if I would like to turn off the name display, you can see that now all of your names have disappeared and it's just the shape. But the teacher would be able to match. Okay, so I'm assuming this green, like limeish yellow green flower is actually Robert. So I could match up his shape to his name. I also can see how many contributions each student did. So this is a really nice in terms of if you might be asking something more deeper or personal, maybe I don't want their names up there, or again, sometimes you can get more student voice if it's anonymous. So that is an option. I just wanted to throw that out there. But this is a really cool activity in terms of critical thinking. So the kids have to really choose and choose wisely because we have to survive, right? So another way I could approach this is creating a graph for them to fill out. So I could have them collaborate with others in their group and they can go through this assignment together. So I could share this slide with them and this could just really be talking points for the group. So I can put them in their rooms. In the room, I could put them in groups and use this Lumio slide and have them kind of talk about which 3 items they each chose and why. And then as a group decide, well, do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Why did you disagree with them? What would be the final 3 products that you choose together as a group? One thing I could do, so right now, you guys could not do anything on this slide. You couldn't add text, you couldn't add an image. So what I could do is go to this classroom management tab. It's always called. So anything you want to manage in your class or in your lesson, you can come up here to this little people tab and I can actually convert this activity. So I could make it an individual handout, which we'll look at in just a few. I can make this a group workspace, which would put a couple of you in a small group on one slide, and then a whole class whiteboard would be all 18 of my students on one slide. Okay, so it is another way to promote that collaboration within Lumio. All right. So switching gears a little bit from our icebreaker activity, I am going to now walk you guys through a couple different examples of different ways that you can use Lumio for critical thinking as well as collaboration. So this first activity was actually a PDF. I really like this because not only um, is it saving me paper because I don't have to go to the copier and print out a bunch of copies. I was middle school, like I said, so I had about 100+ students. That's a lot of copies for one worksheet I wanted them to do. So what I did was bring in this PDF into Lumia, and for them to analyze this text, I added other elements to it within Lumia. So you can see here I added two text box. So I have important things that you're seeing throughout the reading and then some questions that you may have throughout the reading. So these are infinitely cloned. So my students can actually make notes of what they still have questions about, what they still find important. I'm going to delete this. But this is a way that, it kind of, adding these certain features to it makes them, think a little bit deeper or interact with it a little bit more than if I just printed this out and told them to analyze the text. They also have tools off to the side. They have a highlighter tool. They have some image tools. You can see that there is Immersive Reader. Right now, Immersive Reader does not work on PDF text. It only works on the text that I added. So it would only read important in question. But stay tuned. That update is on its way, which is really cool. If you are an Immersive Reader user, soon it will be able to read PDF text. So what I want you all to do is I want you actually interacting with this PDF about the Dust Bowl. So I'm actually going to go back to that People tab, and I'm going to change this into an individual handout because I want you all to do this individually. As I hit or converted it, all of you can hit start, and then I'll start to see all your names start to populate. All right, let's come back over to that teacher perspective, or look at my screen to see the teacher perspective. So on individual handout, I'm able to see who has started it. So luckily I actually have 20 students logged in and all 20 have started it, which is awesome. Sometimes you will see discrepancies there, depending on who hit start, who didn't. I can go through each person's response. So I can pull up Anthony's and then go to the next person. I can go to Ashlyn, so I can see that she's, played around with some of the tools. She also hit done, so I know to go in there. I also can give her feedback. What did you mean by the green triangle, right? So I can give her feedback, which only she would see. And some other things that you can do is I can actually, maybe I go through all the responses and I just need a clean copy of that PDF article about the Dust Bowl. At the bottom right-hand corner, I have a teacher handout that I can actually pull up, and it's a nice clean copy that I can review with my students. I can also bring as many pages as I want of that PDF. So this was only page 1. This would be page 2 of the PDF. So each one of them I would have to convert to that individual handout. But I did include another activity outside of this PDF. So not only do I want them to analyze the text, but I also want them to think throughout the article, what are 4 questions you would ask a refugee that lived through the Dust Bowl? So what I may do as the teacher is open this up to student pacing. So right now in teacher pacing, as soon as I scroll to a slide, your screen scrolls to the same slide. If I open this up to teacher pacing or student pacing, you all now can scroll through any of the slides that you want. So this is very important if I want them to analyze and do critical thinking questions back and forth between 2 activities. If I was modeling a math problem and had like 3 example problems, let them kind of go back and forth between the model and example and then their critical thinking questions for math. So this is just a nice tool to know about, because if they're not in student pacing, they can't go through the slides on their own. I'm not going to make you all do another activity here about the Dust Bowl, but I just wanted to kind of show that that could be a cool example, especially for critical thinking. All right, switching gears just a little bit. There are certain tools that you can use in Lumia when you're creating an activity for your students that are kind of outside of a smart product. So we have a couple different partnerships, but two of the partnerships we have for math and science is a Desmos calculator, but also we have PhET. So I'm not sure if anyone in here is familiar with PhET. Feel free to kind of pop in the chat that you know what PhET is. But if you don't know what PhET simulations are, they're math and science simulators that are really cool for the kids to interact with. It kind of helps them conceptually understand a concept, visually understand it. So this one is just about equal fractions. So on your end, you can hit start. It's not something that the teacher kind of has control of, but you might want to prompt them. They can play a game, but they also can just go into the simulator. So this simulation, they can play around with it and see what's changing, what's the same about it. I can change it to not have common denominators. They can use the shapes to create different fractions. Cynthia uses PhET. So I don't know if Cynthia, you have any like really cool ones that you use. Feel free to pop them in the chat. Some of my favorites when I did use PhET were I was math. So I really like this like graphing calculator one or graphing one for slope. It was like really helpful for like visuals with that. But I really like this because they can play around and see the equal fractions. Element Builder, yep. I love that one too. I think that's the one where you can like combine the molecules, right? Maybe, I don't know. And then it makes like a new element. So I could have a worksheet with this simulator. So maybe I have them create two equivalent fractions that they simulate it with that PhET simulation. So again, just another activity that the students can do for critical thinking using our manipulatives in our Lumio library. Again, I'm pretty sure most of you can probably figure out how to do equal fractions with that manipulative. So I'm going to keep moving here. So this was another, just another math example, but this one is a little bit more critical thinking because we're trying to find what's the mistake in each one of these math problems. So this again was created with just a graphic organizer and the creator just added some text, they added some images, but for the most part, pretty simple to make. But I want to make this actually a group activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this into a group workspace. And just one of each of you kind of pick one of the problems that you see to find the mistake. Yep, so sometimes we have groups of two, groups of three, depending on the numbers. But you as the teacher can actually move names around. So if I wanted to switch people up, I can switch people up. But this is a nice one, again, just for collaborative purposes. I can have them collaborate on which one is the mistake. So as in partners, I want you to find the answer. So I can start the workspace. And now each of you are in your groups working. So again, I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute to kind of interact with it and add some responses so we can look at some examples. Gary, somehow you've ended up in the same group as yourself, which is interesting. Sometimes depending on like if you're having like any like Wi-Fi issues or if you signed in and came back in, you can be like duplicated. So as the teacher, I'm not going to know if my group is finished or not. The groups are done. So I just need to click on each of these tiles to see how your work is doing. So if I click on any one of these team workspaces, I should see, okay, perfect. So I saw this group really did a nice job. I can click on each one of these contributions and see who added what. Again, this is helpful in terms of if I know, I obviously know who's in the group, so I can see that who contributed what. I also can see, let me go to another group. Perfect. So this one is actually a really great example. So with text, it says it's added by Tracy. But if a student came in and said, okay, well, the sum is actually 810, which isn't true. I now see that it was added by someone and edited by someone else. So that works with text Okay, not so much the inking, but with the text for sure. Okay. Now, if I walked in here and oh, maybe it is 8 out of 10. So if I came in here and completely um, deleted the work, I wouldn't be able to get that back. So just FYI, with whole group workspaces and whole class whiteboard, students can delete each other's work. Now, when they edit each other's work, just like I did, it would show up like this. Okay, just a heads up. But again, just a really fun activity in terms of collaborating, coming up with what's the mistake together. I think that also could work as a critical thinking activity. Individually, it's really just how you want to do it with your students. Okay, so we are going to switch gears. So there are some other examples in here. Again, I just don't want to take too much time here in all the examples, but you do have a copy of today's file. So if there's anything in here, you're like, hey, I would love to use that in my own classroom. This one was a food chain one. You could have people work together to try and figure out what the food chain should look like. This one again was just diving deeper and asking questions about thinking about that food chain. And then finally, this was just a cute little activity where the kids can create a story based off of the images that they see here. But awesome, Cynthia. So hopefully you're able to, join or more sessions throughout this year to kind of learn a little bit more about Lumio. I also have a bunch of resources which I'll walk you through at the very end on the agenda. That's going to be super helpful for first-time users. But anyway, I am going to have a switch to that teacher side. How do I create these types of activities in Lumio? How do I come up with critical thinking activities, collaboration activities? So what I need us all to do is you actually need to leave my class for you to get into that teacher side. So in the 3 lines, if you look at your 3 lines, you're going to say leave class, and you can see that my number is going down as you do that. And I just want you to open up a new tab. As the teacher, I do have the ability to edit and remove if I need to. So this is helpful so we can like differentiate between the two sides. So what I'm going to have us all do is this next step. So I'm going to have us enter from Google. So from here, I just want us all to just open up our Google Drives. So this is how we're going to get into Lumio. There are a few different ways to get in, but tonight I'm just going to show that Google Drive integration feature. So from here, and I'm just going to exit out of this one for a second. I'm just going to have us go to the new button at the top. New, more, and then you will see Lumio in that list. So one more time, new, more, Lumio. Now you might have different apps just because your district might have different apps, but Lumio should be in that list. And then I'm just going to have you click on it. And then when you click on it, it's going to shoot you out to the Lumio tab. But what you're doing there is activating that connection between Google Drive and Lumio. Now, because I was just signed in, it's going to put me right in where I need to be, but on my homepage. But for those that may have never signed in before or are, maybe haven't signed in yet in a little bit, it's going to ask you to choose like teacher sign in. Then you're going to go through the prompts. But the goal is that you eventually get here to your homepage. You're going to make sure you say sign in with Google and put in your credentials. But I know you're successful when you're here on your homepage. So what I want you to do when you get to your actual homepage, I want you to put your class ID in the Zoom chat. So Ruffin, I want to make sure. First, you want to make sure you rename yourself in, yeah, go
Ruffin.
ahead. Yeah, Ruffin. Just make sure you put your first and last name in Lumio so we can pull the when we pull the attendance, it shows. But so Ruffin, to get into Lumio, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Do you have your Google Drive open?
Yes.
Can you hit new at the top?
New. New
More.
tab. Yeah.
Not new tab, but you see in Google Drive where it says new in the top left-hand corner.
Just a minute. Yeah.
Can you say
Gotcha.
new,
Yeah.
then go down to more,
Uh-huh.
and then where do you see Lumio?
Yes.
Can you click that?
Yes.
Beautiful.
And teacher sign in.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I think you are signed in with Google. And then you kind of just go through all the prompts until you get to your home screen. Cool. So it looks like a lot of us found our home page. Cool. I'm just trying to see what that looks like on a phone. On a phone, it's going to be in the three lines at the top right-hand side. And then if you scroll down, it says teacher sign in. Just a heads up for my folks on a phone. Okay, so from here, let's talk about our home screen just a little bit, and then we're going to dive into building. So you'll see this is your recents. If you've never been in Lumio, you're not going to have as many files as me. If you are if you have a smart board, you might see some of your whiteboards here. If you're a notebook user, you might see some notebooks here. But if you're a new user, you're not going to have as many files. You might have a couple basic beginner getting started files. And then from here, I just want to highlight some settings that you might be interested in. So the first thing right next to where your class ID is edit class. In here, you can rename yourself. So what you see is what the students see. So if it says Michelle Gray, my students are going to see Michelle Gray. So that's where you might put like Mrs. Gray, Mr. Craycroft. You know what I mean? So um, it's just up to you what you want your kids to see. Then right below that is manage class access. I'm going to have us all click that as well. In the middle is guest access. So there's three little tabs here. If you're on a phone, this might be not as obviously user friendly as it would be if you were on your laptop. But guest access right here in the middle, I want us all to swipe this off. So swipe this off. Boop, swipe it off. What this is doing is making sure my students log in with their credentials when they come into my lesson. So all of you had the ability to join as a guest because we are teachers and I train teachers. So I need people to come in as guests, but we don't want our students to come in as a guest. That avoids that issue of them naming themselves I Love Cats 2024. And then I'm like, I have no idea who contributed that to the collaborative spaces. Same thing, they can't go and edit their work later on with that without that credential connection. So make sure you are swiping that off. Teachers, we swipe that off. So you want yours to be gray, not green. And then finally, one more setting that I typically just do in any Lumio training is this immersive reader option. So we obviously weren't doing that today, but it is a really cool tool for reading text during live lessons. For some reason, this is defaulted as off. We just want to make sure we swipe that on. All right, dead in the middle is My Library and Lumio Library. So if I look over at Lumio Library, this is a really great resource for ready-made lessons, activities. They are constantly updating this for depending on the seasons, the weather. So there's a bunch of new winter things in here, but this is a really cool space to find, if I want to look for certain critical thinking activities that I have in mind or collaborative activities that I have in mind. This is a great spot to start, to see if someone has already created something for me. And like I said, we've done a bunch of partnerships. So Reading with Epic, ReadWorks, In the Footsteps of History. You can see there's just a bunch of things in here that I can pull from. I just wanted to highlight that. We're not necessarily doing things from Lumio Library tonight, but I just wanted to highlight that if you ever have some time, definitely go and explore what we have here in the back end. All right, so let's start building. So right under your name, you will see new. So I just want us to hit new. From here, it's just asking me like, how do you want to start your lesson? All right, so there's all different ways that you can start your lesson. Typically, I always start with my import in some capacity. So in import, there's only a few options here. So I can do Google Drive things. So I can bring in slides from my Google Drive. I can bring in slide or a document. Just other things I might have saved. Maybe I have a PDF saved in my Google Drive. I also can pull from my desktop. So if I have a PDF or notebook or PowerPoint on my computer, you can always bring in things from your desktop. And then you also can bring in things from PowerPoint as well, like I just mentioned. My library is just things that you've already made in Lumio that you want to reuse. Okay, so if you save something from Lumio Library, if you've created something that you wanted to reuse, you can repurpose them in different lessons. So I'm actually going to show you first is how to bring in that PDF. So I am going to just pull in a PDF from my desktop, actually from my Google Drive. I'm hoping to be organized here enough that I have it somewhere. I'm going to look up PDF. Trying to be more organized in my Google Drive. I don't know if anyone else is, I'm going to bring in this side lengths PDF one. So I'll give you, actually, maybe this renewable resources one. So once I select that PDF, it's going to tell me that it's importing. So I will give you all the same amount of time to try and find something that you want to start with. So it could be slides, it could be a PDF, but if you want it to match me, try and find a PDF that you have saved somewhere. Okay, so you'll see that if you have multiple pages to the PDF, it's asking me, well, do you want to bring in all the pages or just one of the pages of the PDF? For the sake of tonight, I'm only going to bring in 2 of the pages. Actually, yeah, I'll bring in 2 of the pages and I'm going to hit add. So Cynthia, they can access work with their phone. So that's the beauty of Lumio is that it's a cloud-based software. So any device connects to the lesson. I'm going to try this one more time. You see that they've imported. I'm going to just refresh my page. A good refresh never hurt anyone. Okay, we're in. We are in. So what the example in the walkthrough, the student walkthrough, I added important and question, and then I added those infinite shapes. What I like about Lumio is that it's super simple. There's not all these tools that kind of distract me. It's very simple toolbar. So at the very top, I have my pen tool, eraser. I have a text tool here. I have an equation editor for my like a formula editor for my math and science folks. And then I can also add images and links, but I'm going to just add those text at first. So I'm just going to I'm going to click on the A. This is what throws people off. If I click on the A text box doesn't immediately appear. I have to click on the space and then it appears. So now I can type important, if I spelled it right. And I'm just going to change this color to blue. I'm going to make it bigger so my kids can see it. Bold, and there it is. Make it a little smaller so it fits in this space. Important. And then I'm going to duplicate this because I work smarter, not harder. And I am going to change this to question. Questioning this. Just got to make it a little wider so it fits. Okay. Then hopefully you were able to just add some text to that PDF page. From here is where folks forget, but you want to make sure you lock things down so your students can't move the things you don't want them to move. So in each object, I can select it, and there's a little drop down menu, and there's an option to lock. So just a heads up for those that things that you want to lock down so the kids can't mess with it. Make sure you lock it down. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is bring in those shapes that I had. So I'm going to go back to this shape tool. And for important, I'm going to add a heart. Get a little smaller. I'm going to change the color of the heart to yellow, red, a little smaller. And I'm going to add for questions. I don't really love any of the shapes for questions. So I'm going to go into my image tool here. And I'm going to search for a question mark. Okay. So now I have my question mark and my heart. Remember, they were infinitely cloned, so I have to do that again. So I need to just go back to the heart, select it, and in my drop-down menu, there's that infinite cloner. Same thing here, infinitely clone this. And now I have a bunch of little hearts, all right? I'll make sure I delete them. The last thing, actually, I'll give you a second to get those shapes and infinitely clone. So now I know when my kids do this reading, they're not just going to be reading it. I want them to critically think throughout this reading. What are some things that they're seeing important about non-renewable and renewable resources, and what do they still have questions about? When I was doing the live student perspective, I was changing slides as I went. So what I mean by that is I was able to convert it to an individual handout group workspace as I was in live mode, because I can go to the people tab and change it on the fly, we call it. But if you're like, hey, I already know I want this to be an individual handout, you can do it while we're editing. So I always remember it because that's where the magic happens. That's what the little magic happens. And now my kids can interact with it. Look up the magic wand in the right-hand side. If I click on that, there's those 3 options that I saw when I was live. So you can do it ahead of time. You don't have to do it while you're teaching. So I already know this is going to be an individual activity. So I'm going to make this an individual handout. All right, I'm going to do that one more time for anyone that missed it. Right here is the magic wand. Click on it. You have your 3 options. Individual handout. One more time. Each tool that you navigate to is always going to have this little graduation cap. If you're like, I completely forget how these things work, look at the little graduation cap. It's a little quick little short clip that you can watch and learn how to use it. Just an FYI. And that can be found anywhere. So when you did this little window, there's those graduation caps. So feel free to kind of use that for if you're a new user. All right, and then if you want to keep adding slides, so if I wanted to do a graphic organizer after this, what I can do is go to this blue button at the bottom left corner, and there's all different, and there's that same window I know about. So I can add YouTube, I can add that PhET simulator. For those that have used it before, there's a bunch of different, there's some ones that you probably are recognize. If you've never used PhET, there are a bunch to kind of explore and use. There's those graphic organizers. So there's a bunch of different, there's a sequencing one we saw. Here's the thinking frame one. There's a bunch of different graphic organizers. That manipulative. Here is that fraction tile you all got to experience real quickly, but there's all different manipulatives that you can choose from. So I'm just going to, just for the sake of just to show it, there's that graphic organizer. So here's my PDF and here's my graphic organizer. Okay. So you can add, mix and match. So I can bring in Google Slides, but then I can add that game, that flip out. So in my games, there's flip out. That was the Survivor flip cards. So there's a bunch of stuff you can come in here and explore. But just to wrap this up, make sure you have a title. I was the queen of untitled documents. So just make sure you have some sort of title up here. It's automatically saving here in the back end in your Google Drive. So you don't ever have to hit save or save as. That's not something that you have to do. But I can hit finish editing and then I'm back on my home page. There it is, ready to go. I can hit start when I want to start my lesson. I can go back and edit it. Each one of them have these little 3 dots in the corner of each one of them. You have the option to do a couple things in these 3 dots. So I can export as a PDF. If you want to, print it out for students, you can export these lessons as a PDF and print them out. You also can make a copy. So for those that teach multiple periods, maybe having a master copy where the kids don't interact with that one, so I can keep reusing that one in the future. But then you can see here, I did it for your sessions tonight. I have my first session copy here and my second session copy here because I didn't want to mess up my master copy of this training tonight, so I could reuse this training in the future, right? Similar concept. Sometimes I want to share this out with my students, right? So if I want to share out their work that they did in tonight's, so if you guys wanted to finish your work, I can hit share link and give them this student link, which helps them work at their own pace and they can work on this asynchronously. Now, if me and Cynthia were colleagues and I'm like, hey, I just found this PhET simulation that you might like, I can give her this teacher link and now she has her own copy of that lesson. I don't have to worry about sharing rights or any of those types of things. Okay. All right, so let's wrap up since we have about 2 minutes left. So before I kind of go back over to our slides, I just want to walk through our agenda real quick. At the bottom are some of the resources for you. So you have a copy of today's file. These are 2 really great YouTube playlists if you need some playlists or YouTube videos to kind of go back and go over some of the skills we did tonight. We also just released a Lumio Academy. So if you're newer to Lumio, you can take this free self-paced course. There's different levels to it. So there's a level 1, level 2. So this helps you gain badges, your PD hours, but also helps you kind of self-paced learn Lumio if you are completely new to it. Highly recommend everyone joining our ambassadors community. It's just a way that you can, again, just learn the product, learn how others are using it, ask questions in this community. You also can, what was I going to say? You also can, you see releases. So if you're someone who, wants to know if Immersive Reader is going to work soon, you can see when things are being released ahead of time. And then finally, if any questions you have after this is my email. Feel free to email me. Okay. So as you leave, your little exit ticket is to make sure, one, you've changed your name to your first and last name so it matches the attendance on Zoom. And then finally, let me hit start.